There's not a single person on this planet who has done it on their own. Not one. So if you think you need to do it on your own and I'm going to do this on my own, well, then you are a snowflake, because nobody ever in the history of mankind has. Absolutely. And I don't even think, fast, as we just said, like, it's not about fast. So the your work is my work is a beautiful universal thing that's come up in our brotherhood. And it really is a calling cry of the brotherhood, because it ties us together. And that's what, in the end, this is about: connection, support, community, all of those things that we need and that we've gotten away from. This is a true source of that and a true form of that.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Ignite the King podcast. I'm your host, Michael Diamond, here with one of our most senior tenured men in our Ignite Brotherhood, Mike Patterson. Welcome, brother. So happy to have you today. How are you?
Doing great, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Seems like this was meant to be. So I'm glad we got it done.
Long time coming. Finally, I think you had to get your new office for us to make this happen.
There you go. New office and nice boom mic. Got the whole thing going. So
yeah, I like the color, as I said before. I'm excited, man. Like I said, this conversation has been a long time coming for many reasons. We're just coming off the heels of our last Ignite immersion, our magician immersion, and we've just seen amazing results of men that attended. We want to get into some of that today and kind of speak of the magic and the results and kind of let men see behind the curtain a little bit. There's always a lot of curiosity around these immersions. And of course, it's hard to explain out of context, but I think it's important for our listeners to really dive into like what's really possible when groups of men get together in a conscious way, in an open way, being led and leading from their heart and seeing the transformations. So, as a man that's been in this Ignite Brotherhood for almost 5 years, you've seen a lot. You've been around in your own journey, of course. So I would just start out by saying, like, give a man out there that has no idea what this is about, just like a little touch into what's possible when we start doing this work. Start with the easiest questions first,
It's like asking, like, can you explain creation in 5 minutes? Where to begin? The immersion is just that. It's a complete pull out of your everyday life, and it's a reboot. It's a reboot. We get immersed completely in this work that we do. It's a reboot on so many levels and on so many ways. It's a psychological reboot. It's an emotional reboot for me every time. I say this almost every immersion. It's a remembering of what I'm all about, who I am as a person, and what this work is about, and why we're here as men. I forget that too often. So it's a huge reminder of me. And I know that's non-specific, but it's a huge reminder for me of who I am and why I'm here and what I'm doing. I think a big piece of men's work for me is getting connected to purpose. And it truly does kind of clean the windshield and get me back clear on purpose and get me on purpose, quite literally. So we can get in a lot more areas than that. And these weekends remind me every time of who I am and what I'm all about.
Yeah, as you say that, I think about the man out there who's like, I have no idea who I am and I have no idea what I'm about. And I often think of the new men that come to these immersions. We have this unique perspective. Our group is, this group of, 15 to 20 men, but we always have space for new men, right? So to be like immersed as a new man in a group of men that have been since traveling together in this work year over year, one can maybe be intimidating, but also like the exact medicine a man needs to like kind of face his stuff. And when we say stuff, it could be anything, right? I don't want to get too much into that, but I'm curious, like trying to give that layman kind of an insight into stepping into something like that. Because I think that's a big inertia barrier that men have to get over. Like, as you know, I've chased some men for years trying to get to that immersion.
One just showed up in this last immersion. Yeah.
Right. Like, what does it take to do the work? But like, it takes a lot of courage, right? It's definitely a rite of passage. So having seen so many men face that first experience, maybe you can share from that place.
Yeah. The first thing I'll say is that every time now I do take special note to look at the faces of the new men, because I know what they're going to look like on Sunday. So I take a special note of that. It's a exercise that I now like to dive into. I will say, and you're right, the initial drop-in is scary. It's hard. It's confrontational. I'm a surfer. So when you're riding big waves, there's that initial point where you just have to like commit and drop in. And you're either going to wipe out and fall on your face and eat shit, or you're going to make the wave. And that's a scary point. It's a scary point because you know what's ahead. You have a kind of inkling of what's ahead. So the beautiful piece that I'll say is that I think every man going into the weekend knows that he has to confront some things. He knows that a new man, that he knows that he's there for a reason. And he has an inkling of, if not a strong inkling, of what he's going to need to face. The beautiful thing about our brotherhood is that he knows immediately he doesn't have to do it alone. And there's 15 plus other guys there right for him to support him in this journey. And it is a journey. The hero's journey happens every weekend. So if you don't know about the hero's journey, go study the pattern of the hero's journey if you're interested in going on an immersion, because that entire cycle is going to happen to you in the span of 72 hours.
Well, what you're specifically talking about there, as you were saying it, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's the point of no return, right? Like that's when you cross over into that special world and you're like, there's no going back. We're not in Kansas anymore experience. So, and I think it's important to highlight, as you said, with the men's faces, like trying to get the listener to really understand what we're talking about here. People's faces morph and change and look different. It's this, and you can see it almost in real time as it's happening. And we often do the practice at the immersions where we're in a circle, we all look around and take inventory and just observe the changes. It's really incredible. On a base level, so much of it is when stress like leaves the face. We wear so much of that stress and that mask in the face, right? And
I think that's an important thing to lean into as well, because there is the scary part of the beginning, and there is that drop in and the crossing of the threshold that's intimidating. But know going into it that on the other side is beauty. On the other side is relief. Whatever you're feeling the stress of now, the kind of crippling stress of for a lot of men right now, on the other side of that, there's freedom, there's openness. There's that wave out in front of you that you've now been a hero to drop into, and you can now ride this wave. And that part is fun. That's enjoyable. That's freedom, right? That's why we drop into a big wave, to have the ride. You're going to get the ride. You're going to get the beauty of that ride. And then you're going to look back and go, wow, that was a great ride.
Well, it's funny you say it that way, because like at the post immersion, looking back, I'm like, that was a lot of fun, right? But it was a lot of work, and it's important to do difficult things. We were making mention of it on our weekly call on IgKnight last night, but like as humans, but as children, as adults, we need to experience challenge that's not traumatic challenge, but we need to be challenged, right? And that's why containers like this, I think, are so important, because where else do you get stuff like this that's healthy, right? That you can be in a container with 15 other men doing the deepest work, feeling safe, non-judgmental, being able to open up and see yours and others' lives literally change in front of your eyes. That's such a powerful experience. And I think there's a yearning for that right now. I think all this, what we're talking about, it's just like, how do you lead up to enough courage to step over that line, as we talk about the feather, the brick, or the truck, right? So what is it going to take? And sadly, I've had many of the women from like Nani Leia's group and whatnot want their man to participate so bad, and they just maybe stuck about it. And man, you just hate to see it take like a threat of a divorce, for example, or something so intense for someone to make change. I think that's part of our mission, right? Is for men to recognize like, there's important work to do, and it's the work to be done, right?
Yeah. And sadly and ironically, a lot of times men will say to themselves afterwards, like, wow, why did it take me so long to do this? Why did I delay this, procrastinate this action so long? If you're listening to this and you're on the brink, or you're on a 50-50 line, just jump in, man. I think in 5 years so far, I don't think we've had any deaths yet at an immersion. I think
some fake deaths.
I think we're solid on that. We've had some fake ones and some injuries for sure, but I don't think anyone has actually died. So you're not going to die, and you're going to get a lot of freedom on the other side.
A lot of
sure. Absolutely. Many spiritual deaths.
So I'd love to start to maybe like hone in on this last immersion specifically, even bringing men. I know you led a big process, and just starting to maybe peer behind the curtain a little bit of both in some of the work we did and then how it's been showing up. Because, man, we were making some of those connections last night on our call, and it's like too good not to share.
I'll start off by saying a big piece of my learning and my work and my beginnings of my facilitation, and you've said this many times, Michael, is to get men to a place that they can actually feel what they're feeling, right? That's kind of step one. And that's where we started on this last immersion with a process called focusing. Can you actually get in touch with what you're feeling on the inside of your body? Our bodies are speaking to us all the time. So really to start there. And it starts with us with that archetype in the lover. What are you feeling? And getting in touch with that is a huge, huge piece, right?
Yeah. Just even having that language.
Yeah, having that language. And then what are a lot of issues that men have with their relationships? Their partner wants them to feel. They want them to express. They want to know what they're feeling. And it's just like this monotone, a lot of times.
Energy neutral
range of emotion that we have. And we have so much more, Rilke said, like we contain multitudes, like we have multitudes. So the first piece on an immersion, and can be part of the descent sometime, it's getting in touch with what you're feeling, like what's actually going on. Get out of your fucking head.
Get in the heart.
And then the rest of the process, it really is like getting into the heart. And that's where I think a lot, like your prior work, Michael, comes in with the network care and in training. And those pieces are like actually reprogramming this into your body. Once you are feeling, what are you replacing that with? And then reprogramming that into your body. I've always said it with the immersions, like there's an embodiment that happens coming out of it. Even this work, it's very embodying. It's not heady. It starts heady, and the head has to follow, but it's embodied work, right? So we can dive more into some specific areas.
Yeah, integration of head, heart, and balls, right? Gotta have.
Right.
Straight through top to bottom, they all have to be online. And, most men have even overcompensated in their head or their balls, frankly. But we need to be led with the heart. I know it's been a big theme that's been coming up in our brotherhood lately of heart-centered leadership and leading from the heart. And as a masculine man, how to access that and be able to connect to the emotions, but not necessarily being emotional, right? Or breaking down, but using that as a superpower almost.
Absolutely. The signals, emotions are really signals and guide maps for us towards evolution, hopefully. Unfortunately, we get stuck in emotions a lot and we don't allow them to move. And I think that's another big part of the immersion is, okay, now you're having this emotion, you're feeling in touch with something. Let's move that thing now. And there are various ways we do that. Entrainments.
I say we move the emotions and the energy. That's, I think, fair to say.
Fair to say. But that concept is foreign to a lot of people that are either new to this or don't know what that means. It means expressing that emotion. Most of the time that's been penned up or hasn't been expressed. Could be grief, could be sadness, could be anger, could be rage, could be joy as well. I know I personally was cut off from joy for a long time. I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah. We had a man at the immersion. He was doing his deeper work and he was a new man, and come to find out he's fucking hilarious. And he had this part of himself that he numbed out, his passionate part. Hence, he was feeling less passion in his marriage of a long time, his less passion in his business life and his work. And then once he tapped into like, I'm a funny guy. We did a bit about it. It was great. And from that moment, it was like, again, like paradigm shifting, where it's like a key got unlocked.
That was the great reminder, because when that man tapped into that part of himself, he completely came online. Everything lit up. It's like the center that needed to be ignited was popped, and then boom, all the other beacons got lit up. And interesting, like you said, that wasn't necessarily like grief or deep sadness or whatever. For him, it was a passion point around his comedic self that he got in touch with. And then boom, everything else comes online and he's lit up like a freaking Christmas tree.
He definitely falls in that category of face morphing, if we're going to be calling it that.
Yes. All the new men do. And he for sure absolutely did. So
one thing that it came to me as we were talking earlier when you talked about a man, like, I'm coming to the immersion for this reason. This is why the work I think I need to do, right? And we really have been able to sort of map or pattern out how there's, why you think you're coming, like maybe what's the crisis or what's going on. And then there's like starts to get revealed when you start doing the work. And then there's this like other layer underneath of like, oh, that's what this work is really about. That's why I'm really here. And that's been really prevalent lately. And I'm just curious your thoughts on that, because I always tell men, you don't need to know what you're looking for. You just have to be willing to look. But I really want to get across, like, there's multitude of layers that start to emerge, which I think becomes one of the most powerful parts of the transformational experience of the immersion.
Yeah, I mean, you said it a little bit ago. There's head, there's heart, and there's balls. There's those chakra systems as well.
The masculine chakra system. We got head, we got heart, we got balls. We got three chakras, makras, mankras. We're mankras.
And that initial head thought or mental process is what brings someone to a work like this. It's more an exterior top line thing. I know I need to do this. And so
I have a problem. How do I fix it?
Yeah. And that brings me to the solution set, which is this thing. And then what happens is that mental energy usually gets somewhat resolved so that we can go into the deeper layers, which are usually in the heart. Like where's your heart? Feeling your heart, knowing what's there. And then even lower is, purpose. This is actually why I'm really here. This is why I'm here. I think for every man on the weekend, this last immersion, that hit at all three levels. And it dropped like that. It was a mental thing that guys had to deal with. Then it became, oh no, this is really about me being in my heart. And then the heart spoke to purpose and why a man is there. And a lot of what came out of this last weekend, interesting, was family, intimate, the closest relationships that they have. Not necessarily, I'm here to fix the world, but I'm here to fix the world through fixing my own or working on my own relationships first.
And my own backyard.
Yeah, that was one of the men had that great revelation of, my purpose is to work in my backyard first, like grow that garden, and then that will empower everything else.
Yeah, that led to a much bigger opening around siblings, right? Brothers and sisters, our connection with Nani Leia's group and the women there. We did more work around that. And I love the idea of like, yeah, there's this grand vision, but it's like, fuck, let me start with my own family. And to that point, how many miraculous things have we heard since the immersion from the men, brothers and sisters being reunited. I shared how my brother has stopped drinking after many, many years. There's other men reconnecting with family members in just a short amount of time.
Along those lines, so I wanted to share this one story. So one man, he's a relatively new man. He came to the immersion and he was kind of digging into what are his issues. He had a healthy upbringing. He had good parents. He was kind of digging into like, what is it? Like basically, what's my problem? Because
I shouldn't have any problems.
He couldn't find anything immediate. But in one of the exercises, he started to envision his grandfather and what his grandfather went through. And his grandfather went through a lot in the Depression, essentially. He really got connected with his grandfather's plight and how that's affected the family. Long story short, 3 days later, he's on a flight to go visit his grandfather for his 95th birthday. And his grandfather ends up giving him this incredible blessing of, because he's the firstborn grandchild, of like, look at what our grandchild has done. Look at the man that he's become.
That was wild.
Healed so much of his story in his family. And he was doing it to actually bless his grandfather, to show up on his 95th birthday. And he did.
Little did he know he was getting the blessing.
He got this huge blessing. Talk about reframing stories, because he had a whole story about who he was in his family. And that got completely reframed. And there's no way at the beginning of the immersion, if you asked him, like, why are you here? Well, I'm here to reframe my story around my whole lineage of my family. He would have not had that answer.
That was wild, and one of the through lines in all of this was action, right? Initiation. So it was like these awareness, and I think you pointed that out on our call, right? Where it's like awareness, and then like conscious focused action, because there's this like pitfall that just like, oh, how do I fix it? But he really felt the disconnection of like, wow, like here's this person that I looked up to so much, and yet here I am thinking these other things about myself, and then had the opportunity to see him, and then from that place taking action. Or men like claiming new time with their family and seeing immediate turnaround of behavioral challenges in children. I mean, just the list goes on. It's like unbelievable. And even men that didn't attend the immersion, that part of the group, and getting that sort of non-local healing.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just wrote an article. I write on an amateur level, and I just wrote an article about what men's work is, because it just kind of hit me. I get the question all the time. It hit me a few weeks ago that if you want a pithy answer, men's work is about taking right action. And there are a lot of things that go into that right action, but in the end, taking right action. And you just said it, Michael. I saw so many men out of this weekend taking right action, and it's almost like an effortless effort type of right action. It's something that
it's aligned action.
It's aligned action. It's something they want to do, and it comes effortlessly, and it flows out of the knowing of the action.
Well, how many men out there are like trying to do the right thing, and it just seems like uphill both ways, and nothing's in alignment, and it's clunky, and its decisions are being made out of past hurts and traumas and patterns, and men are wondering why things aren't changing, right? And it's like you get embodied, you do the work, and it's like all of a sudden, like you said, there's just a knowing. Right? There's just like a effortless effort. That's a great way to put it.
And it's usually one thing that's just like so pointed and powerful. It's not a burden because it's like one thing. This man, the download he got was go visit my grandfather on his 95th birthday. And he went and did that. And then the things that waterfalled after that have set him free at every step. So yes, it's usually a very pointed, clear, actionable thing, and then everything else falls in line because of that, because it gets to the source, right? Gets to the source.
And to that point, if we would have asked him prior to this experience, do you think you're going to be healing some lineage wound with your grandfather and then be visiting him for his birthday? I don't know that would have been on his list.
Not even close. Not even close. And the head, like that's where we talked about the head, the heart, and the balls. The head can't figure that out. Doesn't come from that source.
Yeah. We've actually banned that statement from our group, I believe, and try to figure it out. I always laugh when I talk to a new man, because it's just, that's our default as men, right? We got to figure things out. We got to, find the solution, and it gets overwhelming, right? And kind of to come full circle with what you talked about, the immersion, it's like a reboot and cleaning that screen off. And I think in our innate natural state, we know what to do. We know what's right, but we've gotten so clouded over, so hurt, so just stressed out, burnt out, overwhelmed, all the things. And then it's like, I just don't even know who I am anymore, right? And there's been this analogy lately at our immersions of like dropping the backpack off, right? And this heavy backpack that men come in with. And I started asking the question in the pre-qualification of the immersion of like, what is it that you need to leave at this immersion and not bring home? And it's been a very powerful question. And I think that might be a good place for a new man almost to start thinking about it. Maybe you can add some insight to that.
And it follows that same pattern of the inkling that a new man will have, or maybe not even inkling. Maybe it's like, yes, I need to do this. That's, again, the mental piece of knowing that needs to go, and then it's going to drop even further down. So start where you are. I quote David White, the David White poem, start close in. Don't start with the second thing or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. So it's usually starting with that thing that and then that's going to drop down even further. And of course, by the time a man leaves the weekend, he's like, well, that wasn't even like, that thing's gone. Like, I'm not even dealing with that thing anymore. Now I'm like down in my balls. Yeah. It's like, I can't even believe I was concerned with that.
That thing that was such a concern. I remember my practice, I used to have to remind people of the pain they came in with, because when it was gone, they'd forget about it, right? Which is the point of pain, right? If you've dealt with it, you don't need to feel it.
Right. And once, like you said, once that's gone, it's gone. It is in a magician way. Interestingly, this was the magician immersion. What is the pain trying to point me toward? Where is the pain guiding me so that I can eventually take right action or move in the right direction? A lot of us are stuck in a downward revolution of the pain, right? And not using it as a signal. And I know you've worked with this for 20 years as a signal for healing, right? So are we doing that? And then I would say for a new man, come with that, bring that, whatever that is. It's welcome. It's always welcome. I have not yet seen a man show up with a pain that we have not seen yet.
Right.
So
pain to progress.
Yeah.
Pain to progress.
And it's all relatable. It's all been felt in the field, happened before. As unique as a snowflake as you might think you are not.
No snowflakes allowed. Yeah. That's kind of the base of archetypal work, right? Is as unique as your personality is, there's core aspects of your masculine identity that are the same as all of us, right? And we all share similar wounds in certain respects. We share similar challenges, and this ties into a piece I think it'd be worth exploring for a moment. Is your work is my work, and part of showing up and being in an immersive container like this is twofold. Like, yes, you're doing your own healing, but you're witnessing other healing to receive the wisdom of that, right? We don't have to go through every pain in order to receive healing. It's something very powerful in witnessing another man do his work, and the sort of unbound energy we're able to tap into as a result. And this is a phenomenon that, again, unless you're in this kind of container, where do you find it? So maybe kind of trying to relay that to someone, because what are you talking about? So just curious how that lands.
I think it ties into my what I was saying previously, that we think that we have this unique issue, this unique set of problems that nobody else has. That then leads to one of the pains of men that you've talked about in the past, which is lone wolfing it. I'm the only one that feels this or has this issue, so nobody else can help me, so I'm just going to go at it alone.
Yeah.
When we come in,
or no one cares.
Or no one cares, right?
Yeah.
A brotherhood has been so healing for me because of this reason. One of the many things. It's been so healing because A, I know I'm not alone. B, I know I have support for whatever I'm feeling. And C, I know that other men have felt this and gone through this and experienced this too, and can hold it. And that's why we don't have to, like you said, your work is my work, hold it all, because we are a collective. We are a connected body. We are all in this together, whether we realize that on the daily or not. And we don't have to hold all of this on our own and by ourselves. And the your work is my work is the opposite to me of lone wolfing, of going about it on your own, of bootstrapping it, of pulling yourself up. That notion in our culture is fucking bullshit. There's not a single person are a snowflake, because nobody ever in the history of mankind has. So absolutely. And I don't even think, fast, as we just said, it's not about fast.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right?
So the your work is my work is a beautiful universal thing that's come up in our brotherhood. And it really is a calling cry of the brotherhood, because it ties us together. And that's what, in the end, this is about: connection, support, community, all of those things that we need and that we've gotten away from. This is a true source of that and a true form of that.
Beautiful. There was another phenomenon that really presents itself. Maybe it might be our last topic here, and then we can start wrapping it, was around the ripple, and how even in a tight, intimate, small group container, the literal ripple of healing or energy going out and impacting our families and beyond. And I know that can get very meta, right? Like, how far does that ripple go out? But we've definitely seen things happen within the confines of the immersion and then show up however many degrees later. It blows me away every time how connected we are. And I'll just share, and I mentioned it briefly on this call or this recording already. We had some prayer on the last night of the immersion after everyone had left. And again, we were talking about siblings and around healing all this energy. And, I called in my brother and his challenges with drinking, and found out a week later that he had stopped, and he had stopped on that day that we were praying. And I'm just, blown away of the timing of how these things show up. And then what ripple that's going to create in his life. And I'm not saying I'm the reason why, but just the correlation of that. And I know it's connected to it. I can tell you that for sure. How exactly, I don't know, but it is. And so, yeah, I'm just curious your perspective on that whole phenomenon and the importance of realizing your work matters beyond just yourself.
Yeah, you've said this before, and you've said it in past immersions. The spectrum of light that we can see is only so big. It's pretty limited. And energy and light radiates beyond that spectrum that we can see, no matter that we can see it or not. The ripple effect, to me, again, it speaks to connectedness, first of all, that we are all connected. That other point that I was making, we are absolutely all connected energetically on many different levels. And then it's kind of the phenomenon of inertia and introducing a piece of change into a system and having that ripple out. Back to the surfing analogy, waves are created by intense energy in one spot that then creates a rippling pattern, literally a rippling pattern outward of waves, and then waves are created. That's the visual known spectrum that we can see and that we know. That same thing impacts other spectrums of energy that we can't see and that we can't visually observe, but they're still happening, regardless of whether we can visually see them or not. So those things, those intense, and the immersions are these things too. They are like intense storms in a good way that are creating energy in a body and then rippling outward. That's what an immersion is. It's just like creating waves in a body of water.
We should have like, how do you test energy? Like, is there like a specific gun that we can use? We should see like, what amperage we can get the energy up to or something.
Yeah, like they used to do that like in sports stadiums when the noise was so loud. Decibels. They had like decibel measuring. We need something like that to measure the ripple effect. It'll happen sometime. At some point, somebody will.
The ripple effect. That must be a book by now. But if not, we should coin that.
Well, interestingly, I am writing a script called The Butterfly Effect. But the butterfly effect is an actual phenomenon. It's like if a butterfly flaps its wings over here, 3,000 miles away, that could be a hurricane system, right? How does a small action impact something else non-locally somewhere else?
Yeah, and then we start getting fun things like quantum entanglement and all sorts of cool stuff that might be a whole nother conversation.
That's what I was going to say.
It's going to need to be
the next episode of this podcast.
I'll just tease the men with a little quantum entanglement. You
didn't think that you were showing up for this podcast to learn about quantum entanglement, but
may have been mentioned once or twice before on a previous episode. We'll see. So, Mike, as we thank you for all this, because especially in facilitation, you're in co-facilitation, but I'm so in it in a certain vein and lens at the immersion that to hear back the experience or how it's being perceived is really helpful for me. I think helpful for new men. I think that's the art of it, is to how to explain it in a way that both a novice and a experienced person will derive value. And I think you did that really beautifully today. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having me on, and hopefully some of this was helpful for you men out there. And just ultimately want to impact the lives of others. So if this had that ripple effect.
Well, and that's the thing. And just to round it out here at the end, because maybe this episode reaches that one man that reaches out that his life changes as a result, or 10 or 20 or 100. But what would you say to that man that maybe has stayed all the way through to the end here? Is like, wow, I'm intrigued. I don't know really what they're talking about, but I'm intrigued. What maybe new question would you ask, or guidance would you give, or wisdom you can offer?
I would say that if you have stayed through 40 minutes or whatever it has been of us talking and are intrigued by what we're talking about, then an immersion is right up your alley, because there's something in you probably that wants and is questing for more. And I would ask, what is that? And then follow that thread, follow that desire. There is a thread in us that is always kind of pulling us forward. So follow that thread. And if that means reaching out to Michael and scheduling a call or whatever that is, take that next step. It's usually a baby step at a time. So follow that intrigue.
Get tickled by the feather.
Follow that intrigue. Yes, follow your intrigue and keep going. That's another one. Keep going. Don't just stop here. Keep going.
Yeah, we say that often. Keep going. Whether it's IgKnight or other forms of doing the work, it's important. This is who we are as men now. This is becoming the standard. The benefits of it are far-reaching, and that ripple is big. As always, like, share, subscribe this episode. IgniteTheKing.com. IgKnight with a K. Mike Patterson, thank you so much. I feel like we have many more conversations to have as we dive deeper into this work. So I'm glad we got this one in the books. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, for having me on. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Oh, man.